First of all, thank you for joining. It's a great pleasure to be again in New Zealand, this time virtually. So my name is Romano. I'm from Portugal, the other side of the world. I've been working with Microsoft Stack for 15 years. I do mostly consulting. I work at DevScope as the manager of the business intelligence team. And I consider myself a data engineer, Power BI addict. I've been working with Power BI since before it was Power BI. So I'm very, very passionate about the product. And I'm also very passionate about APIs. So that's sometimes I think I'm the only one that gets excited about this stuff. So if I sound too excited, so please sorry for that. Sorry in advance. Everything that I'm about to show you is already at my GitHub. So if you go to GitHub Romano, you will find out the slides. You will find out all the demos. They are splitted with a few repositories, but you can on the slides you have the links to the codes, the links to the Power BI file. So you don't need to worry about taking screenshots of everything is already published. So the session today is called Power BI API Extravaganza. It's not a Power BI introduction, so I'm assuming you all know Power BI. It will be entirely focused on REST APIs. There will be a lot of PowerShell code. So if you don't know how to write PowerShell, don't worry about it. Someone in your company or a colleague or a friend will know. Focus and mostly on the possibilities, what you can do. So it will be a little bit fast-paced. I want to show you a lot of stuff that might be useful for you, at least I hope. And it's the first time I'm doing this session, so I'm still getting the timing. So, but I hope I believe I can show everything in 60 minutes. Okay, but it's not only about monitoring. So I will cover at least my favorite scenarios about APIs, what you can do with the APIs. One of those is monitoring, but I have a few other demos that I will show. Okay, first of all, what is a REST API? So the REST APIs is it's a collection of HTTP REST APIs that you can call. And you can call for multiple purposes. So you can use the REST APIs for administration purposes, like creating workspaces, assigning premium capacities to workspaces, deleting and and assigning permissions to workspaces. So you can do admin level stuff with APIs. You can do monitoring, which is one of the biggest use cases of these APIs. You can use APIs to be more productive, to be more efficient. Because you can automate a lot of stuff with it. And you can also use APIs for real time. And you can use APIs to embed it. Embedding part is out of the scope of this session, but you can use these APIs not only to generate the token to do embedding, you can use the APIs to integrate Power BI with your application, to list the reports, to list the workspaces that exist. And they are pretty well documented. So if you go to the docs, you will see all the APIs are in here. They are grouped by multiple operation groups. You get the admin APIs. You can expand. You can click on API. You can see what the API does. Some APIs have this indication here. It's the throttling. So you can, for example, data flows, get data flow as the users of the data flow. You can only call it 200 times per hour. It's very reasonable, but if you call it more than this, you will get throttled and you need to wait like 1 hour to call it again. And you can see, of course, the URL that you need to call. You can see the response that the reply that the API will do. So the first thing is, how can you learn more about the APIs and how can you play with the APIs, even if you are not an admin? So I was showing already the docs. Let me just open it again. So let's see, for example, a basic one. I want to see the workspaces. You can go click, in this case, the groups or workspaces. Let's see, get groups. So this will describe the API for you. You can even see the parameters that you can pass. And one thing that is very nice about this website is you can actually try it. So if you click on this button over here, you will need to sign in with your account. So you will try it with your actual account, with the permissions that, of course, that you have. So you select the account. I'm selecting this one, and in here you can just hit run, and this will show you the reply of the API. So we can call the groups. Let's call another one. Let's call. Oh, sorry, I think I cannot change it here. Let's try another one. For example, datasets, and get datasets. This will reply back. It's a little bit slow. Okay. Datasets, and this will reply back all the datasets and the information. So in the other one, it was returning the metadata for the workspaces. Now it's returning the metadata for the workspace, the ID, the name, who has configured this dataset, if it's refreshable or not, and you can even get the URL to do Power BI embedded. So the APIs and this website it's normally very well updated. As soon as the API gets released, it will be in here. And you can use it to learn more about what exists in the APIs. There are a ton of APIs here. I will show you, for at least for me, the most important ones. And you can try it. You can understand and learn more about it. This is the stop point that you can use. Okay. And so this is how you can play with the API. So just call it, understand more about it, what type of permissions, what you need to call, what it will reply back to you. And how can you work with the APIs? So to work with the APIs, if you want to do something professionally with it, you need to actually know how to code, or you need to know how to script, or you need to be comfortable at least with some with automation, like Power Automate. So something that is allowed to that gives you a possibility to call an API, an HTTP request. So, but any language that can make an HTTP request is compatible with the Power BI REST API. So you can do .NET, PowerShell, Python, Java, whatever you want. There are multiple today. There are multiple libraries and packages available for you to use the API. So I will use mostly PowerShell, or the only one that I'm going to use is PowerShell. I'm using the PowerShell, the Microsoft Power BI Management PowerShell module. That is another one that I actually, it has at heart because I wrote it, but today I'm deprecating it. I'm using mostly Microsoft module just because I would like to have more time to support it, but it doesn't make sense because this came out first than Microsoft module, but doesn't make sense to have two PowerShell modules. So today, all the scripts that I'm about to show you use Microsoft PowerShell module. There is also Python. You also have a .NET NuGet that you can use if you're writing .NET code to like a wrapper of these APIs. And if possible, if you want to write a script to use the APIs, you should use a service principal. And I will talk about that in a minute. So let's the first demo. Let's see how can we, using PowerShell, how can we call the API and play with it. So I already have a script in here. This is also at GitHub. So the first thing that you need to do if you are starting with PowerShell is you need to open a PowerShell prompt. I'm using PowerShell IDE, is a code editor. This is installed in every Windows machine. So the first thing that you need to do is you need to install the module. So you'll write install module and the name of the module. and this will install the module in your laptop, in your machine. After that, you will find that every script, it has this first line over here, because this will make sure that the module and the version that I need for the script is loaded, or it's installed. So if it is installed, this will run. So let's just try. If I put a 3 over here, this will get an error, which is good because I'm like making sure that my code will run with this specific module. Let's put back as a 2. So the first thing that you need to do with a PowerShell commandlet is you need to connect to Power BI. So you need to log in, because to call the API, so you need to be authorized to do so. So you will call connect Power BI account. Let's just run this line, and this will, if you call it with no parameters, this will just pop up authentication window, and let's authenticate with my account, and you will see the result. It will tell you, okay, I'm authenticated with this user at this tenant. And after that, I can just start calling the commandlet. So let's call get Power BI workspace, and this will get back all the workspaces that I have access to, remember. So I'm calling the API with my account. So this will only give me what I have permissions to I will only see what I have permissions to see. But you can also see that I'm an admin, so I can call this API also as an admin. So the scope, this parameter scope, organization all, will return all the workspaces, not the workspaces that I have access, but the workspaces that exist in the tenant. So if let's call, so there are 100 workspaces. So that actually it's not 100, it's more than that. 119, but if I call it as an admin, 193. So I'm an admin, but I am not a member of every workspace. But if I'm an admin, I can call the API as an admin. So that's what this scope organization does, and I will see all the workspaces. And I have other commandlets. So there are a few commandlets. For example, I have the other one, get Power BI dataset, and I can provide a workspace ID, and this will return all the datasets inside of that workspace. And there is a final one that is very interesting, that it's invoke Power BI REST method. So in here you can call whatever API you want, and you don't need to worry about authentication. So this will be a wrapper for the web API, and you can call every API. How can you find this? So if you remember, if you go back to the docs, so let's say, for example, datasets, get datasets in group. So this is the URL that you need to put in the parameter. So after this, so groups, group ID, datasets, dataset ID, and for example, in here, I'm calling the get Power BI dataset for a workspace, and I'm doing the exact same call, but using the Power BI REST method. So I'm calling groups, workspace ID, datasets. So this is, if there is an API, a new API that it's not yet supported as out-of-the-box commandlet, you can call it, and you can use the model, the PowerShell module to call it without having an out-of-the-box commandlet. Okay, so this is as simple as it can get to. I'm just calling the APIs. I'm just playing with the APIs. This is very good, at least to make sure that you can call it, that you have the proper permissions to do it. Let's go back to the presentation. Now, let's talk a little bit about authentication. Not that I'm an expert on this, because I'm not, but authentication, to authenticate with the Power BI, this will use OAuth 2.0. Sorry, is there any question? Okay, let's go.
No, carry on.
So authentication, this uses OAuth 2.0. The simplest way I can explain OAuth is like a dance between an application or a script, authentication provider, and an API. So you can think as the client application is the script, the PowerShell script, Azure AD is the identity provider, and then the resource web API is the Power BI API. And this is an OAuth flow. It's called client credentials. So the client application goes to Azure Active Directory to get a token. It's not where it's doing the authentication, and then it will get back a token, not the credentials, the username and password, and then it will use that token to connect to the resource API, in this case, the Power BI API, to get the data. And that token, so this is an example of the client credentials flow. So this is doing a post token, client credentials, the ID and the secret of the service principal. I will explain what is a service principal in a minute. And as a reply, you will get the actual access token. And this is what you need to call the API. So after you have this, and this will be valid for 1 hour or 30 minutes, I'm not sure. So for 30 minutes, you can use this API to call this token to call the APIs. So that's the only thing that you need. There are multiple authentication flows in OAuth. These are the two that I mostly use when using the Power BI API. So the client credentials is actually my recommended approach. It's using a Azure Active Directory service principal. A service principal is like a service account, but you cannot actually log in with that account. It's something that is used for scripts with no interactivity. So that's why I recommend to use it, because it's even more secure. Because if that secret, that ID and secret gets compromised, they cannot take that username and password and log into Power BI. They can write a script with that, but you as an admin, you can also invalidate the secret, and then it will stop working. If it's an account, you need to reset the password, and they can actually log in to your Power BI account. And if you have a script that is running admin operations, so it's a Power BI account that is an admin. So be careful about that. And you also have the auth code flow. So this one is the one that I just shown. So I created, when I called the connect service principal, it popped up a window, and then it went to the identity provider. I do the authentication with identity provider, and then it's a little bit more complex than the client credentials. So then come back to the script with the authorization code, and then go back to the identity provider to get the token. These are the two ones, but the authorization code, it doesn't work with the service principal. You need to work with a Power BI account. But it's very useful for those scripts where you just want to run it once and you don't want to store any kind of credentials in the scripts. Service principals. I will show you step by step how to create a service principal. So I think I can remember by head. So let's go to Azure. So you go to your Azure portal. You go to Azure Active Directory, and in here you'll find there is a link, app registrations. You click on app registrations, and then you click on new registration over here, and then give it a name. Let's call it demo Power BI API Extra. Leave everything as default. Click register, and let's start taking some notes. So I will need the app ID. I want to grab this and this, the app ID and the tenant ID, app ID, tenant ID. And you need to generate a secret. So let's go to certificates and secrets. And the service principal can have multiple secrets. So let's click on news client secrets. Let's give it a name. And you can say, you can have a name, and you can say when it expires. So recommended is 6 months, but you can put 24 months, and you can also put a custom date. And you can have multiple secrets. So that's why I say it's even more secure, because if something gets compromised, you can just come here and delete the secret, and the service principal won't be compromised anymore. So let's save the secret. And that's it about the service principal. You don't need to do anything else. There is a misconception that people sometimes they go to this API permissions, and because there is a Power BI service here, they allow everything. You don't need to do it. Okay, to call the API as a service principal, you don't need to do any of it. Okay, and sometimes you use a service principal, it fails, and you think it's because of this. It's not. Okay, you don't need to do any of it. So that's everything that you need to do is what we have done regarding the service principal. The next step is you need to authorize this service principal to call the Power BI APIs. And to do that, you need to go to Power BI. You need to be an admin. You need to be a Power BI admin to do it. So you go to this workbench over here, you click Admin Portal, and tenant settings. Let's just search for API. And in here, you will find out there are two tenant settings that you need to use. You need to allow service principals to use the Power BI APIs. And if you want to use that service principal as an admin, for example, for the monitoring, you need to also allow the service principal to use read-only Power BI admin APIs. But I cannot add a service principal over here. You need to use a security group for that. I cannot just come here and call and give permission directly to a service principal. So you need to create a security group. A recommendation that I always give is every tenant setting, I create a security group for that tenant setting. So I have the Power BI service principal security group, and I have the Power BI admin service principal security group. So let's go to the security group, Power BI service principals. You can even create a new security group if you want, an Azure Active Directory group. But in this case, I'm going to reuse this one. So you need to go back to the Active Directory, and you have the option here, groups. And on groups, you can create a new group and add the service principal as a member. I will reuse an existing one. So Power BI service principals, members, and let's click add members. Remembering the name of the service principal now. Let's try. Does anyone remember the name of the service principal that I created? Power BI, this session. Let's try to find it as the ID. Oh, it's not working. That's something like demo, right? Okay, let's create a new one. I forgot. It's probably too early for me. But the ID, the search ID should work with the. Okay. Funny, the new experience doesn't work, the search ID, but the old one does. STEMO PBI API extra. Let's copy back. And security group.
A very quick question for you. I got a question via a chat, which is, do you need to register an app? Do you need global admin permissions?
No, you don't need to have that. I'm not an Azure AD expert, but I know that there is a setting over here that sometimes, I think it's enabled by default, but sometimes it's disabled, especially on big tenants. I think security. No. There is a setting on Azure Active Directory that that you can enable and disable. It's here. So user settings, and you can specify if the user can register an application. So most of the time this is disabled, but if it's enabled, any user can register an application. Okay, but you need to be a Power BI admin to allow the service principal to use, and you also need to have a security group. And to create a security group, that's not. I think you need to be at least a contributor for the Azure Active Directory, but I'm not sure about that. But if you have a security group that you already own, you can just add the service principal to that security group. And if you are a Power BI admin, you will allow that. you can also allow that. But for the service principals, you don't need to be an admin if this is enabled. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you.
I'll go back to the security group, Power BI service principals, and let's just add service principal here. So it's just like a regular user. Select it, and we are set. So we are good to go because I already allowed the security group to use the APIs. Otherwise, I would just get an unauthorized. Okay, and after that, you can start calling the APIs with the service principals. Let's do that. So let's put on the previous script. I already have it parameter. So I have app ID, the tenant ID, and the secrets. And now there will be a slight difference. So I don't need to do this connect. So that is as well a disconnect for VI service account if you want to just make sure that that there is no one logged in the script. And now I'm going to create a credential object. So I need to create this PS credential. I need to pass as a credential. This is like the username and password, the app ID, and the app secret. And then on the connect for VI service accounts, you need to turn on the switch service principal. You need to give the tenant ID and you pass the credential. And let's try to run it. So, and now this is logged in, not as my user, but it's logged in as the service principal. Now if I try to get the workspaces now, remember that before it was returning 100 workspaces, and now it's returning only 1, because this is the only one that the security group is allowed to see. So this is the only one that the service principal is allowed to see. If I call the all, now with the switch as an admin, this will get me an error because that service principal is not authorized to execute the APIs as the admin. Now let's call the get for VI dataset for the workspace, and this will work because the service principal has permissions on that workspace. Let's try to call another workspace, and it will fail because the service principal is not allowed to call to connect to this workspace. Okay, but this is way better than so it's not better, it's different than the using the default the connect service account with no service principals, because this is better if you want to have a script that can run without any kind of interactivity. If you want to have something on DevOps, for example, service principal is the way to go. That's normally my go-to approach. I usually always have a service principal that I can use. For example, for the monitoring scripts that I'm going to show you, I want that script to be running every hour or every day, so I cannot have any kind of interactivity. If I want to have a script that is just to run manually, then I want to have interactivity. I don't want to have secrets in my scripts. And of course, if I have something like this is not the best practice, so you should, in a way, like encrypt this information. So this is just for simplicity, because this is actually like a password. Okay. Okay.
Roy, another question on that note from the chat. Can you automate the process of creating a service principal and grant access in Power BI admin portal programmatically?
You can create a service principal programmatically. I'm sure of it. Adding the tenant settings programmatically, I don't think so. Not 100% sure, but at least as far as I know, I don't know if Phil can add something here, but as far as I know, there is no API to manipulate the tenant settings. Unfortunately, it was I would like to have that.
Thank you.
But as far as I know, it's not possible. So you can automate the service principal, get the secrets, all of that. But in the end, you need to. What you can do is you can create a security group. You can go to the admin portal and put the security group there. And then when you create a new service principal, you just need to add the service principal to the security group, and that you can automate for sure. Okay. The only thing that you cannot automate is this part, having putting a security group on the tenant settings. But you can have a generic security group like I have in here. So you just need to add the service principal that you just created with automation to this security group, and that will solve your problem. Because it's not also a good idea if you are putting multiple security groups in here. So that it will be better to add because a security group can have as a member another security group. So normally what I have is actually a service principal security group for each tenant setting that I want to use. That's normally what I do. Okay, can we move forward, Jeff?
Yes. Yes.
So all of this is kind of boring, but I think it's useful to at least show how you can start and what you need. Now let's talk about some scenarios, and I have 4 scenarios that you can where you can leverage these APIs. I hope I can show them all. At least I put them in priority. But let's start with the first one. So DAX queries with REST APIs. And this, let me tell you, this is the coolest API of all. So this is like, I don't know what's, should have like a timing. Let me put it like this. So this is the coolest API of all. So it's really amazing. The first time I heard about this API and I tried it, my head was like bubbling with ideas. So you can do a lot of stuff with this. So if at Devscope, we have a lot of Power BI products. We are leveraging this API on all of them. The special part of the API is it works with premium and shared capacity. So it will work with pro capacity. You don't need to have premium to use it. The only requirement is you need to have an account or a service principal. That service principal need to have, or account need to have the build permission on the data set. And you need to have this tenant setting enabled. You allow XMLA endpoints and analyze in Excel. So today that is not an isolated tenant setting. It might be in the future, but today you need to enable this one. There are some limitations, of course. The main one is you need to understand that this will only return 100K rows. It's very generous. So even if a good scenario is you might use a script to extract data from Power BI. That's not the best use case, but sometimes you might have because you might have a lot of logic in your data sets and you just want to extract and store and snapshot a portion of the data. Just be aware that if that result set is greater than 100K, it won't work. But the scenario is something like this. So you have a script or a logic app or a Power Automate, and you can just call the REST API as a DAX query, and you will get back the result. So you will get the JSON of the DAX query that you just executed. Let me show you this running. So REST API DAX query. So I have a script over here, and I'm doing this DAX query, basically listing all the employees where the sales amount versus last year's sales is less than 0. So employees that are underperforming. I even have a parameter. So the idea is to have the today date. I would like this script to be running every day and snapshotting a list of all the employees that are underperforming. So I have the date. So I'm prefixing this date because on my model, I don't have today date, but this should be, if this is going to be dynamic, I should have like a date time now or date time today. I do the authentication, and you need to pass this body. So as a JSON, you need to add, it can only execute one query, but maybe they are making this ready to allow you to do multiple queries in one request, but today only one. So you pass the query, you say that if you want to return null values or not, and the REST API. So now I'm calling the invoke REST method. So it's dataset ID. So you don't need to provide the workspace ID, which is nice. Execute queries, you pass the body, and now I'm doing a post. It's not a get. Let's run it. authenticate. So, and this just return the file, the JSON with the result set that of the employees on that date that has sales amount versus last year in negative. And I also save the file as a CSV. So it should be an output folder in here, and I'm snapshotting with every day. So if I open this file, this will just show a CSV file with the DAX results. That's query results. Now, this is one scenario. Another scenario that is also very nice is, imagine that you are building a website like this one. So I'm sorry, this is in Portuguese, but I think you will get the point. So imagine that you are building a website. So you have a web development team, and you are embedding Power BI. And you want to have the same KPI that you use in Power BI on your website. So you can use this REST API to avoid duplicating the logic of that measure in your website. So you can, for example, this website, we built this website. The REST API didn't exist back then. So, and this is a published web. So the KPI, you can see that is different. So, but it's the same API. We are actually changing this code to allow to have a link. So from on this website, of course, we are going to do some caching, but this will do a request to the data set to have the same KPI without redoing the logic, which is great. This is, like I said, so this opens a lot of possibilities. I'm really, really excited about this API. And let me show you a final one that is really nice. So you can also go to Power Automate. And you can have a flow. I create a flow over here. That is a very, very simple flow. It seems a little bit complex because I like to put things in variables and stuff. So I have the first variable, the query. So it's the same query that I showed in the script. And I also have as a variable the dataset ID. And my flow, it will do an HTTP request to that dataset. It will execute the query. You need to configure the client ID, the secrets, and the tenant ID. So, and that service principal needs to be authorized. It needs to have the build permission on the dataset. And I will parse the JSON. So this will return a JSON, and I will create a CSV file, create an HTML table, and I will send an email. And I can have a flow running every day. Let me try let me show you, run the flow. So I can have a Power Automate that will run every day, and it will say, it's like an alerting solution. So I can have running a query, detecting something and alerting me, or sending, in this case, the scenario is I want to find out every day the underperforming employees, and I want to send an email to the manager with a list of underperforming employees. And I can even have a link to a Power BI report in the email. So I just got the email. It's in here, underperforming employees, and I can put the as an HTML table, so I can have the results set directly on the email. I can also attach a file with the information. So just like that. So without very simplistic, simple way of using this API, but yet very, very powerful. So I don't know if you agree with me, but this is awesome. Any questions? Can we move forward?
Excitement.
Yep, no, but I do agree that it's awesome.
Yes. There's probably some apprehension from those of us that are underperforming employees, but you know, we still appreciate the technical expertise involved is awesome.
Yeah, so you can do whatever. So you can build an entire alerting and data alerting mechanism of this. I didn't try like having hundreds of queries running at the same time. Maybe there will be some throttling, but this API is amazing. Now let's go to the next scenario, monitoring. So I don't have much time to deep dive on this. So there is a full session about this topic. The link is on the slides. Everything, it's already on GitHub. So the Power BI files, the PowerShell files, so everything that I'm about to show you, it's already on at GitHub. But the idea of monitoring is actually, so it's literally, if you have any kind of admin role, a Power BI admin role in a company, it's literally stop guessing and start knowing. Because if you don't collect this data, first, you are losing the data. And second, you don't know what's happening. Even if you think you know what's happening, you don't know what's happening. If you don't look at data, you don't know what's happening. You might think you know, but you don't know. So, the Power BI monitoring, the idea is to monitor things like who are actually the most active users, the users that you need to reach if you want to turn something new, if you want to do an upgrade, the users that will get very, very impacted about your change, which are the reports and workspaces and data sets that are mostly used. And maybe the reports that you think are the most important because the reports that gave you more work they are not the most used in the company. They are not the reports that are used on an hourly basis or daily basis. You might have a strategy to deploy workspaces and have a governance strategy, and maybe people are publishing content to the personal workspace because they don't know other way to do it. So it's important to know what do exist inside the personal workspaces, and what kind of browser, if they use mobile. Which browser do they use? Which mobile application do they use? Do users use Excel or not? The data sources, so you can get information about all data sources that exist in your tenant. If people are connecting to files, maybe if they are connecting to local file system, and you have as also a best practice to use OneDrive, and you want to detect this, and you want if someone is connecting to a local file, you want to go to that user and send them a guideline to upgrade to use OneDrive or SharePoint Online. And so you get all the data sources from all the data sets. Distinct users. So this is very, very important if you are planning premium, because the amount of users that you get, distinct users that you get per day and per hour, they might, it will get you an idea of maybe the premium capacity that you might need, because you might have 1,000 users, but per hour you only have 10. So and this is also important for licensing, because you might get into a situation where the total count of users is 500, but per month you don't have more than 100. So if you ask me how many licenses you need, maybe you don't need 500. You should need 100 or 150, because a license in Power BI is like a seat. Today I'm seated, tomorrow another user could be seated on that seat. So refreshing, Power BI refresh, the trends, the average, the errors. Another thing is not also what's not being used in Power BI, what is not being used for more than 1 year. Maybe it's time to deprecate that report, because you are spending time and money and effort on supporting that report that no one uses. So it's also important to monitor the no users, and of course licensing and gross this data. So how many users do I have with a paid license that they don't use Power BI in more than 3 months, in more than a year? And maybe you have other users that are asking for your licenses and you are not giving them because you don't have any more license, and you have a lot of users that actually don't even log into Power BI. And another thing, this is fairly new, very new. It's you can also get the schemas of the data sets, the tables, the column names, the DAX, the Power Query, and you can, for example, have a Power BI that will make sure that all the developers will follow a specific naming convention. So this is the motivation, okay? Why you should do it. And I'm being a little bit romantic here, because if you have a big tenant, please do it, okay? Or please find a way to do it, because this is This is very, very important. It's literally, maybe you are thinking that you get the specific, your users use Power BI in a way that you think that it's not a reality. I've seen.
You get stuff about premium capacity, like for instance, the Gen 2 premium capacity metrics app. Is any of that exposed via an API, as far as you know?
No. Well, these APIs, you can get the capacities that exist, but you don't get the same information that you get from the capacity metrics app, unfortunately. So this is what the data, and I will talk about the APIs and what data you get. So you'll get activity per hour. So if you open a report, that will generate an activity log, and you also get the catalog data. So all the workspaces, all the apps, all the data sets, the data sources. But it's mostly about metadata, what exists, what is published on Power BI, and activity logs. But it doesn't go that granular to the capacity.
Okay, thank you.
So the solution that I'm going to show is it has 4 PowerShell files that extract the data. They extract the data from the REST API. Remember, if you are not using this, you can only go back 30 days. So if you are not collecting this data, you are losing data. I think you can go maximum 90 days, but you need to go through Office 365 management APIs. But one more time, you are losing data, and you are losing data that might be very useful for you to making some big decisions. I'm also connecting to the Graph API. This is completely optional because I want to get the licenses and the users. So this PowerShell solution, it's on GitHub, one more time. It has also a config file where I store the service principal ID secrets. And when you run these scripts, this will store the data in a file system, in the folder. And then I have a Power BI report that connects to that folder. If you ask me, is this the best architecture? No, you should do something in Azure Functions, Logic Apps, and data lakes. But this is the easiest solution that I can find to put something for you to just like a plug and play. You just need to have a service principal, authorize that service principal, configure the service principal on the config file, run, and you have everything running. The beauty of it is this Power BI report is already built. It was built to easily switch from the folder to the data lake. So it has a technique that I call the file proxy that is connecting to. So every query is connecting to a centralized Power Query query that by default is connecting to the local folder. But if you switch that to a data lake, everything will run. Okay. So let me demo this. Okay, activity monitor. So this is the first report. It's the activity overview. So I can see a lot of information in here. So I can see the trend per month. I even have some anomaly detection. So if I have something that is anomalous, let's click on this button over here. I can see, okay, there is an operation that is not normal, generating bet token at that specific time. So it's not normal to have this amount of operation. So this is, as an admin, this will like bubble up some anomalies that you might want to get alerted for. So distinct users. So this is one of the most important metrics. So amount of users. So on my tenant, I have 125 distinct users, but per month, I don't have more than 73. And I even have on this chart over here, I have the distinct count of users every month. So I can see that in March and April, I got around 80, then it dropped, and then it's increasing again. And this is Power BI, so I can click on August. I can see, for example, in August, these are the users that use the Power BI. So this is the most active user. I can control and click on this user. I can see which workspaces that user access, which Power BI apps, which data sets, the activity per hour. So I can see he was mostly active at 8 o'clock. And let's remove the filters. Okay. So I have the logs per hour. This is also really important because on here I can see that my hourly activity. The line chart will show me the distinct count of users, so I can see that I never had more than 18 users per hour using my Power BI tenant in 1 year or half a year. So this is also some good information for you to know. So normally at my tenant, on average, it's 6 users per hour, which is not it's not too big. I can even click on users per date, and I have a ribbon chart that will show me plot all the users, and I can see this red one. It's a service principal, so it was first, and then it's the second user. The first user is Antonio, so Antonio got crazy from March to April. It was like skyrocketing. In July, he's a developer of one of our products. Probably is doing some tests with the products. I also like this visual over here that is scatter, that is correlating the logs with the distinct users. So on the X is distinct users, on the Y is the logs. I can spot some outliers over here. So export activity. So this is an outlier because it has a lot of logs, but it's only one user because it's the service principal that I'm using to extract this information. But this activity you can get. It's not just about report view. So you can get a lot of things. So you can get view reports, export activities, generate web tokens. You can even look at things like, okay, who is doing refresh datasets operations? And you can click and you can see, okay, this is the users that go to datasets and hit refresh because they have permissions to do it. And which workspaces, which datasets. So this is like a cockpit for you as an admin that is really, really useful. One thing that I also like to show is I have a drop down here. I can click on authoring. Imagine I can be a Power BI. I'm handling the governance. I'm doing self-service workshops in my company, and I want to know if they actually are doing and creating and editing reports. So I grouped the operations. I call the authoring. So authoring is everything: creating reports, creating a dashboard, editing a report, and I want to know specific on authoring if I'm getting a good activity trend. So because I'm spending money and effort doing workshops, and I want to know after the workshop if people started creating and editing reports. So just filtering the operation group, you can get that information just like that. So catalog. So everything, what do exist in your tenant? How many workspaces? How many workspaces by type? So if it's Office 365 group that is getting deprecated, how many personal workspaces do you have? What do exist in the personal workspaces? Do I have content in my personal workspaces? Which personal workspaces? What content do I have? This is something also very new. It's the apps. You can also get today the Power BI applications as the admin. Who are the publishers of the apps? The datasets creators. So this is just looking at the catalog. Another thing is the data sources. So data sources, this is listing all the data sources that you have in your tenants. You can even come here and search. Let's search for this one, CRM, and this will show me all the connections with CRM on the connection string. This is very useful. For example, you want to see how many data sets you have connecting to your production databases or your files. So this file over here is very useful. I have a customer that didn't want no one to use local files, and he has like a report that is filtering all the connection paths that starts with a letter, and every time he find out, he clicked on the data set, go to the user, send in an email with a PDF. Hey, you need to switch this to OneDrive because you are not allowed to have local files. So this is also useful to follow some governance strategy. And finally, this is one of my favorites. It's the permissions. So in here, I'm on the scanner APIs. I will talk about the APIs in a minute. Today, you also get not only the permissions for each workspace, but you get the permissions for everything. So I have this 2 slices over here. I can see, let's say, okay, I want to search from my user. And I will filter my user, and I can see everything that I have access to. All the workspaces, all the data sets, what type of permissions I have on the data sets, if it's read, if it's build, if it reads and reshare. So you get all the workspaces. So this is amazing for InfoSec. So you can get very granular permissions on all the objects. So I can do the other way around. So I can click, let's say, on the specific data set and see all the users that have access to that data set. Okay, that is one specific one, very particular. It's this none. So on the permission by identity type, this none over here is actually it's the share links. It's the new feature where you can go to the report. You have this share over here, and if you click apply, this will generate a link that you can send to anyone in the company to see the report, and this will list all the share links that you have, all the reports that are using a share link, the reports and data sets that has a share link. Is this none over here? I need to maybe, this is what I get from the API. I will probably do a replace and have, like, instead of none shared link. But this is very, very useful. And of course, licenses. So I can, this is a report that is, I'm focusing, okay, show me all the users with no activity and with a paid license. And I have 13 users that they don't even use login Power BI. So I might remove the license for them if I want. Another report, and this is one of the reports that you get from the solution. Another one is a refresh. So this is just getting from all the data sets that the service principal has access to, the refresh data. So you can click, let's say, on a data set over here, and you can see all the refreshes, the duration of each refresh. This is very useful to understand the timings of the data set refresh. I also like to do something like, I have a standard deviation here. So let's say, let's look at data sets with a very disparate timing. So I have this data set. You can see, for example, this one over here, I have, it takes 22 seconds to refresh and sometimes 2000. So this might be something that I want to look at because it's not normal to have these big gaps between refreshes. And another one, I created this report a week or two ago, because you also get from the APIs the schema. So and this will allow you to have like a self-documentation Power BI report, because on the report, if you build a Power BI data set, and on the measures and on the columns and the tables, you can have descriptions and you can document your Power BI data model. Let me see, let me filter one that actually has some descriptions. I don't have anyone with descriptions, but this will actually list. So this it has a filter. You can filter the data set, and when you filter a data set, it will show you, okay, this data set has 15 tables, 139 columns, the distribution of the data types, the table and the columns, the type of the columns. I can even click and see the DAX. The DAX is also here on the column. So this can be like a wiki of your Power BI data models, and then you can link a Power BI application to this report and using the URL filters to filter a data set. So this might be very useful, but and for all the data sets, which is great. So it's like, as I said, like a self-documentation strategy. It's not perfect. There are some things that are missing in here, but then you can also have an Excel file with other information that you don't get with the APIs, but at least you will get something. And it's very, very useful to have as a centralized report with all the schema. And for example,
put some of the tabular editor best practice rules over some of that DAX, you know, and go, oh look, there's somebody there who should be using, I don't know, add columns around a summarize rather than, you know, using measure inside it.
not only that, but you also get you can also one of the things that I always like to follow is having a naming convention. So if you have a big company, you should have a naming convention for your Power BI datasets, because that your users will get used to those namings, and you can get this data and make sure that the Power BI data model is following the naming conventions. And then go back to the developer and say, hey, you need to follow the naming conventions. Please change the names before going to production. There are other ways.
Do you get friendly names from this as well? Like, so if people are routinely changing a name to something more friendly, will it signal that?
Yes, if something changes on the dataset, if I publish a new version of the dataset with a new name of a measure, that will be reflected here. That's the good thing about this, because you don't need to update this manually. I've done this these reports in the past with manual data. So every time with an Excel file, where every time I publish a data set, of course I have some automation that with DMVs I can get this data as well. But today you get this for free. You get this on the scanner APIs directly. Okay. So about the APIs. And I'm not going through the code, because otherwise I will get out of time. It's the code. It's on GitHub. Ping me if you need any help. But it's PowerShell code that will, for example, on the scanner APIs, it will use 4 scanner APIs that will explain in a bit. But for example, the activity PowerShell file, it's a very simple PowerShell file. It's 72 lines of code. It's just calling the activity API every day and storing the results on a file. So, but regarding the APIs, it's so I'm using, for the activity, I'm using the admin API, the activity events. But the one that I want to just briefly explain is the Power BI metadata. How do I get the workspaces, the data sets, the permissions, the schema, and the lineage? I'm using a new API that got released start of this year. It's the admin scan API. These are all admin APIs. And this one, you need to call 4 APIs, because they are async APIs. They're not an API that you call and you get the result back instantly. So you need to call first the get modified workspaces. This will get you all the modified workspaces with a specific date. If you don't pass the date time, you will get all the workspaces. So the first time you need to pass it as a blank value, and this will get all this will tell you, okay, this will get all the workspaces in your tenant. And then for each workspace, you need to call this API, the post workspace info. This, let me just show you really quick. It's it's called the get info, and in here this is the most important one, because in here you will say what type of scan you want to do. So normally I ask for everything: dataset expression, dataset schema, dataset details, artifact users, lineage. So when you call this API, you need to say, okay, what type of scan you want to do, and after that, basically, this is a thing. So you call this for all the workspaces that got modified, and then you need to have like a loop that is checking the scan status. So you get an ID and you call that ID and just confirm that the scan is ready. And when the scan is done, you get the result. So this is 4 APIs that you need to call. The script fetch catalog is doing that already, and then the refresh history is using the dataset API to get the refresh history, and the graph, it's API, it's not Power BI API, it's a graph API to get the users and the licenses. Okay, so and this is the APIs that I use, and those 4 PowerShell scripts. So try to use it. It's on GitHub. Give me feedback if you have. It should be very straightforward. Mostly people they have problems on the authentication part, creating the service principal. But if you follow those steps that I just showed, create a security service principal, create a security group, authorize a security group, it will work. Okay, no problem. Jeff, I think I'm running out of time, right?
I could go all night, but at some stage you're going to have to feed your kids.
have
We've got a ton of questions in the chat, a ton of amazing comments, but it's hard to know. There's so much content there. It's hard to know which have been answered and which haven't been.
If I can have like 15 minutes, for me it will be perfect. I think I can show the other demos.
Excellent.
If not, we can go for the questions. But
fantastic. No, go for it.
Oh, okay. Like I said, I get too excited about this stuff. So now this final part is productivity and DevOps. Okay. And it's using the API to make you more efficient, to make you more to do things faster. So this is one of my favorite APIs, Rebind Reports. This is an API that will allow you to go to a report or a collection of reports and bind it to another data set. And you ask me, why do I need to do it? Multiple reasons. So one of the reasons that it happens to me, it only happens to me like once or twice. It's the actual data set got an issue, and we need to recreate the data set. It got corrupted. So you don't need to recreate all the reports, and you don't need to republish all the reports. You can just go to the report and bind it to another data set. Another use case is minimizing the user impact. So you might want to publish a data set that takes a lot of time to refresh, and you want to do the refresh, and in the end, bind the reports to that new data set. You need to be careful about that, because if you are using Excel that connects directly to the data set, this will recreate the data set. So those bindings will get you will lose those bindings. And another use case is you are using analysis services or Azure analysis services or SQL Server analysis services, and you want to and everything is working, and then you are moving to premium, and you want to make sure that all the reports that target that data set, that Azure analysis services data set, they now will target the new data set that is on premium. And please don't do it manually, because you have ways to do it automatically. I will show you two approaches, the manual one and the automatic one. The manual one, let me just first go to the workspace. It's I have a demo, it's called Rebind. So the first thing that I'm going to do is show you the lineage. So I have a data set in here that has 3 reports in the same workspace. But what's special about this data set is that this data set also has reports outside of this workspace. Okay, it has data sets, reports on the same workspace, which is normal. But I also have reports outside of this data set, of this workspace, that are connecting to data set A. Now, the first thing that I'm about to do is, let me one more time, the script, it's on GitHub. Let's call it reports rebind manual. And this script over here, it has 2 parameters, the collection of reports and the data set that I want to target. So let me just make sure that I'm, so they are all connecting to data set A, and now I want to connect to data set B. I want to go to the report test 1 and report test 2 manually, and specifically targeting these two reports, and I want to target to this data set. And first, how do I get these GUIDs, these IDs? So if you open a report, if you open a report in the URL, this is the workspace ID and this is the report ID. So this is what you need to grab for each for the reports that you want to rebind. Let me go back to the lineage. And the dataset ID you also get from the URL. And this script is basically doing the authentication and is calling the Rebind API for that report. So I'm going to the report, I'm doing a post, and on the body, I need to pass the dataset ID that I want to rebind. So let's run it. Okay, and let's refresh. And now, test 1 and test 2, I think. Yeah, test 1 and test 2, they are now targeting dataset B. And this is fine. This is great, because if you know, if you want to, if there are few reports, there are no problem. This is the easiest solution. But as I told you, and I showed you, dataset A has a ton of reports, and you can get to a situation, I've seen that happen many times, with a dataset with 100 reports. And of course, that you don't want to go manually finding out all those IDs, okay? So you need to have a way to do it automatically. How can you do it? So I have another script, it's called it auto, and in here, it only has two parameters, the old data set and the new data set. And what this will do, it is, let me just make sure that the order is correct. So I want to go from all data sets, all the reports that target data set A from all the workspaces, and I want them to be binded to data set B. Okay, data set A is the old data set, so it's already as I want it to be, and the new data set is data set B. If I want to, I can switch the order. I just wanted to make sure, yeah, it's gonna, data set A is where the reports are targeting, and the script, it will do the following. So it will connect, and then it's going to use the get Power BI workspace as an admin, and getting all the reports and the data sets, and I will get a list of all the combinations between report ID and data set ID and the workspace ID. So I'm creating this list, and then I can easily see, okay, give me all the reports that are targeting the old data set. And then for each report, I'm doing the rebind. So let's run it. And this is a metadata operation. This will run really fast, even if you have 1,000 reports. Rebinding. So this is rebinding all the reports from all the workspaces in my tenant to the new dataset. And you are done. So dataset A now doesn't have any report in here. That's just for you to show you that this really worked. Let's go back to dataset A. Let's switch now dataset B. Run.
So you can kind of fake a deployment pipeline without having Premium.
Yeah, we will get that. We will get there in a minute. but this is more than deployment. So this is something that, for example, you want to test a specific report with a data set that your developer just gave you. So this can be very useful just calling in an ad hoc way. But to call this script the auto, you need to be an admin, because you will need to call the get Power BI workspace as an admin. And now, if you ask me, hey, but I'm not an admin, and I want to use that automatic approach, I have another script. I call it the non-admin. A disclaimer here, this is completely unsupported. It works as it is. Doesn't have a lot of risk, but this will depend on something that is called the related content, because when you go here and you click on this button, this is calling an API. It's an internal API. It's not available, so you cannot call it. But what you can do, that is very simple. You can open a network tracer, and if you click here again, this will call an API called related content. So you'll search for this related content. You can click on the API, and this will get you the JSON of all the workspace, the reports that are targeting this dataset. And what you can do is you can copy the response. You can go to this, you can create a file that I call related content JSON. You can save the JSON file in here, and the script, the manual script, the non-admin, it's exactly as the auto, but the difference is not calling the admin API, is getting the related content from the file. Yes, it's a manual operation, but it's way better than figuring out and going dataset by dataset or report by report, and you don't need to be an admin to run it. So this can also be very, very useful. At least I can tell you, like, this was useful for me many, many times, especially on big deployments. Okay. Now, another thing that it's also a very good productivity improvement is capacity switching your workspaces. So you have an API that you can assign premium capacity to the workspaces, and you can do that in bulk. So why this is useful? So imagine you want to migrate from Gen 1 to Gen 2. Please don't do it manually. Don't go to each workspace there and manually assign the workspaces. You might. I've done this script because I've seen a customer that take like a day to migrate almost 500 workspaces manually. I just told him, hey, stop, I will find you a script to do it. So this script is a premium capacity switch. So it has two parameters, the source. So I want to go to all the workspaces that are targeting, that are using this premium capacity, and I want to move them to another premium capacity. And remember, premium per user is also a premium capacity. So this can be useful to okay, I want to move to premium per user, for example. I want to go from all my P1 workspaces, and I want them now to be premium per user. I bought the licenses, and you don't need to do it manually. So this script, it's a very simple script. It's just fetching all the workspaces that with connecting to the script, to the workspaces that are using this premium capacity, and it will switch the premium capacity using this admin API, assigned workspaces. So, and this run really fast. So if the capacity is turned on, I think I can show you because I turned on my Power BI embedded capacity. So in my tenants, I have a premium per user licenses. So you can see I have this tenant with a user, and I will switch all my workspaces to use Power BI embedded, Azure Power BI embedded. So it just find out, okay, 34 workspaces. It's now doing the switch and it's done. So if I refresh the workspace again, now it's premium. It's not premium per user. And I can, of course, go back, input as it is, because I don't want to be paying for the Azure credits. And you can see that this is really fast. So it's just a metadata. If the capacity is turned on, this will run instantly. And just as a final demo, let's talk about DevOps. And how can you automate the deployment of your Power BI development? So first, if you have premium, what I'm about to show you, maybe it's not the best approach. Because if you have premium, you can use Azure DevOps, you can use Tabular Editor, you can use the REST APIs. That is an amazing session by Daniel, the creator of Tabular Editor, that shows how to use Azure DevOps and have like these pipelines where the Power BI developer, if he wants to do a development, it will create a feature branch, and and when it's done, it will create a pull request that will trigger a build pipeline. And that pipeline will make it needs to be approved, and if it's approved, it will make the deployments. So see Daniel's session, you'll get the point. And if you have premium, I would go on that path, and I will be more, maybe instead of using the PBIX file, using the bin files, because in that part you can have multiple developers working on the same project. You can have source control. So have that in mind. If you don't have premium, I will show you like the Power BI DevOps of the poor, because but it can also be very, very useful. So let me show you. This is also on GitHub. I created a project on my repo. It's called Power BI DevOps. And the idea of this is I have a project, a Power BI folder, where I have my data set. So my data set is in here. Sales PBIX, and I have reports. So, and these reports, this is live connected. So the reports, it's connected. They don't have the data. It's a live connected Power BI file. And now what I like to do is I have a declaration of how I want my configuration to be. So I have a config file, and I can have a config file by each environment. You can see that you have the production and the dev, and the config production. In here, you will see first the workspaces. I want to declare my workspaces. I want to say, okay, I have a dataset workspace. I have a workspace for the sales reports, and I have a workspace for marketing reports. These are the names of my dataset, of my workspaces. The permissions that I want, I don't have any permissions, but in here I have a default one where I say, okay, all the workspaces, I want to make sure that they have this permission set. So this is I want to use a security group, and I want to use a service principal. One is a member, another is an admin. So all the workspaces will have that permissions, and the script will make sure that it has that permissions. And if I don't have the skip permissions as default, this will actually clear the permissions from the workspace and make sure that only these ones are configured. And then I have the data sets. And the data sets, I'm saying, okay, this data set, I want to get published to the workspace, the data sets workspace. I want to make sure that these are the parameters. When I publish the data set, I want to make sure that I'm targeting the production database. And for each report, I want to say, this is the workspace where the report will get published, and this is the data set that I want the report to get binded, okay? So it's like declaring how I want things to be. I want to have these workspaces. I want for the data sets and the reports to be on those workspaces. Let me just show you the development. The development configuration. So on development, I have everything on the same workspace. I only have one workspace. I'm setting up the permissions manually. But for example, on the parameters, I'm targeting now the development database. But it's the same development. So it's only one Power BI file for the data set. I don't need to have like the PBIX dev and the PBIX production. I only work on one version. And the idea is using the REST APIs, I have a script that I call deploy. I won't go into detail because in here it has a lot of code, but everything it's on this module. I call it Power BI DevOps. It's on GitHub. But I have three commandlets: publish workspaces, publish datasets, and publish reports. And the idea is I can run it, and this will make sure that my report so the workspaces will get created, the datasets will get published, and the reports will get published, binded to the dataset that I want. And just to show you this running, let's create a new file. Let's call it here PBI API. Edit. And let's keep Wellington. Let's prefix all the workspaces with Wellington. In the end, I want to delete it. So I'm changing the workspace names, and now it's new workspaces. Everything is new. I want to deploy the whole thing to a new set of workspaces. Save. And let's just PBI API. So all the commandlets, you need to pass the configuration file that you want the publish to happen, and let's just run it. And what this will do is this will create that strategy of workspaces for me, the development, the datasets workspaces. It will ensure, you can see that is assigning the permissions for me, is cleaning the permissions, is publishing the datasets, it's making sure that the dataset has the proper parameters that I want, and is publishing the reports, is using the rewind operation for that. And the beauty of this is I do the declaration of what I want, and I test the script, I make sure that everything is running, and I don't need to worry about it. If I want to publish a new version of the report, and I will just show you that, that's the final demo. I'm sorry for the time. As I said, I didn't have the time to rehearse the timings. But now I'm sure that I need to remove some demos. Okay, the workspace should be in here. So Wellington demo, this is all new. And let's open the sales report, sales over here. And this this data set is connected to this report is connecting to the new workspace. We can see the lineage. So it's connecting to that new workspace. Everything in here, it's new. And now let me show you the final demo. So I have this report over here. I have it open. Let's switch the color of this report. So this is a live connected. So this is a report that is connected to in this case, it's connected to the development workspace. It's not connected to the workspace that we just created, but it doesn't need to be, because this is just it's my development file. It's not, but I want to publish this to my production environment, and I want to make sure the script will make sure that the rebind will happen. So let's switch this to another color.
And I take it you can't do that rebind unprogrammatically. There's no other way to do it other than programmatically, right?
No, you can do it either way, but you need to. You can do it. What you need to do is on the Power BI desktop, you have this data source settings, and you can switch the data set over here. But now imagine if you have 20 reports and you need to do it, open 20 times Power BI desktop and do it manually. It will surely take you, if it's 20, 1 hour or so, because this is also a little bit slow because this is making the connection. So you can do it manually, but as Adam Saxon says, I'm not lazy, I'm just efficient. I would recommend to go on this approach.
We can tell it takes hours and days though, right, when we're charging them?
Sorry?
We can still tell clients that it takes hours when we're charging.
Yeah, you can. No, or exactly. You can say it takes 10 hours, but then you go the other 9. You go and spend time with your family probably. Now, I just changed the background color. Now remember, the current version that is published, it's on purple. And now let's run the script again. Now this time I will only publish the reports. I will only run this line. And let's see if the new report will get there. Okay. Purchases. Now it should have, next one should be the sales. So in here I'm using two APIs. I'm using the upload API, and I'm also using I need to upload to a temporary file, and then I use the final operations called, it fails, why it failed? Maybe it's because I have this open. It's failing, maybe. The API is getting slow. Maybe I'm getting some throttling, but it works. So trust me. So in the end, so it didn't actually. This is the only one that didn't get published. The other two were okay. This is actually not normal. Normally, this operation is way faster. Yeah, but this works. So the idea is you declare what you want, and in the end, you can just run the script, and this will make sure that the final version of the report is there. Let's see if now it's running. Chases. Now, okay, now it will run. So sales, and let's just go back, refresh. And now the new report will be in here. But the developer don't even need to have permissions to the production data set. You will have permissions to the development data set. He will work on development, and the script will make sure that when it gets published to the final to the production workspace, it will do the binding to the production data set. Okay, that's another advantage of having this. Wow. One more time, Swap Premium. You have other ways to do it. Just see Daniel's session. I'm sure you'll find it very, very useful. I just have a final demo, but I also have this on another YouTube sessions. I won't do a demo because I'm really run out of time. I don't want you. It's really late for you. But it's streaming, so it's how to do streaming. I actually done something with Phil on the trace, creating this push data sets using the REST API. So you can also use Power BI to have this near real time or real time operations. And you have two types of data sets. You have the push data set where you can create complex data sets, multiple tables, measures the relationships. It's 2 to 5 seconds, so it's not as real time as the streaming ones, but the streaming data set is very limited as well. So you can, it's limited to only one table, but you can actually get that feedback of real time. And this is it. One more time, sorry for the overlap in time. And it was I really enjoyed preparing this session for you guys, and thank you.